But if you're sufficiently observant, for example, if you want to take an opinion poll of society, you might do an opinion poll amongst 1,000 selected people whose social class, sex differences fit them into the model of British society, and from that you can relatively accurately, scientifically assess the outlook of the population on certain questions. Politics, social opinion and so on. Well, that means, of course, on the other side, that if you walk down Oxford Street or if you observe thousands of people or millions of people every day, which we all do, we think we don't, but we do. When you wander around the town, you'll have seen at least 20 or 30,000 people this morning. At least that, probably more. And you subconsciously you observe them all and watch their 450 muscles in their face adjust and amend themselves according to their psychological state associated with the world they live in, the background, their environment, their history, and how they're now reacting and feeling in present conditions. And therefore subtly and gradually you notice, or probably initially you don't notice, the transformation in consciousness and how it reflects itself in human behaviour. And then, last night for example, I was on a bus late at night, late, far too late, far past my bedtime. Some old boy was on the bus and he screamed and shouted at the bus driver, 45 minutes I've been waiting for you! And then within the bus there was an argument broke out with this old man, and it was basically the other people on the bus were arguing with him, well, it's not his fault. Well, we don't know if it's his fault or not, but anyway, it's not his fault. The point was they immediately took a stance that had a certain sociological importance because they were discussing who is responsible for poor services which you are using. So it's a very concrete phenomenon, and the conclusion automatically on behalf of ordinary people on a bus pissed at night was that it's not the responsibility of the worker, but actually the general attitude being fostered by the governments in Europe is that the problems in society are caused by the workers. They're the ones who are getting too much payments, too much welfare, parasiting off people, getting payments they don't deserve, getting pensions they can't afford, and you know, they have to come to grips with the fact that society can't be run like this. And we have to change the way things are, make people work a little bit harder, give a little bit more energy, a little bit more effort, and this psychology is being promoted amongst the middle classes, of course. Because they are also taking a little bit of a cutback, and because their cutbacks are slightly different in quality and quantity, they can be more careful about their prudence and then be also a bit more condescending about their attitude towards the ordinary people. Well, I've cut back on this, why don't ordinary people, why don't the masses, why don't working people, or someone sent me a video the other day, why don't the lower orders adjust their behaviour according to the circumstances and get on with life? You know, like Norman Tebbit years ago, he said, get on your bike and look for work. Get off your ass and do something. Don't be a lazy parasite. The culture of welfareism must come to an end. And therefore, a certain psychosis is created, fostered by this political argument from government forces and their theoreticians who really ran out of ideas a few years ago. I'll take you 1 second. And they are disseminating an idea whose consequences are this type of reactionary, insipid mentality to attack your neighbour. To attack your neighbour who's foreign, your neighbour who's on benefits, your neighbour who's ill, too many foreigners in the country, all this type of insipid propaganda to turn one layer of the population against the other. So we are in many ways in kind of a reactionary phase within the readjustment of psychology within society.
What took place last week? What led to the whole
last week
that broke out?
Well, which I consider to be a little bit of an indicator of that. Last week the Nazis came down here. It was quite a large
Defence League.
They call themselves the English Defence League, but it was quite clear that significant numbers of them were Nazi thugs. I mean, they just had that air about them.
Yeah.
It was that.
You weren't intimidated by
with the
them, were you?
well, initially I was standing over here when they gathered over there.
Well,
there were
moved
about
over there.
there were
Police
about
moved
60
them all
police around them. About 60 police.
How many were there?
There were about 30 of these EDL people.
Okay.
EDL boys. There was one woman. EDL boys, and then there was a Jewish rabbi
From America.
with a big beard from the Tea Party movement in America, who came and spoke on their behalf.
Far right.
They had been earlier at the Israeli embassy backing Israel.
The worst.
So, of course, it sounds illogical, but they're trying to construct a base from which to begin a campaign to turn one against another. And of course, the easiest way to do that at the moment is to attack Muslim terrorists who want Sharia law in Britain, because that everyone. Well, I agree with that. You know, I mean, you want Sharia law in
I
Britain,
reminded them that
you
the
know, a
English
tiny
flag
group of the
originates
population.
in the Middle East. They
Sorry?
didn't like that, but I reminded them the English flag originates from the Middle East.
Well,
from
what
the
was quite
Armenian
funny-
Christians, and that Christianity, Judaism, and Islam don't come from this part of the world.
Well, seriously though.
So how can they call
so
it?
once they were over there, and I asked a few people what should I do, and some people turned around and said, "Don't go over there." I was tempted to speak, so I went over there, and when the guy got down, because they kept chanting when this guy makes a statement, then they kept chanting, "Hey, hey, EDL, hey, hey, EDL," and it was like some, you know,
Football mob.
bunch of thugs, you know. So anyway, this guy got down, so I stood up on my little platform and sort of made a bit of fun of him. I said, "Why have you got?" But it was the way of saying it, you know. But there was a huge crowd from Speaker's Corner there. About 200 or 300 people had gathered round, and it was, you know, the usual crowd, which means we've got quite a few black faces and Muslim faces, Middle Easterners, and so on. And they, of course, assumed that this was some anti-EDL demonstration going on, whereas it was just the people from Speaker's Corner. And so then I said, "Well, why have you got? If you're, I said, firstly, it's quite funny. Why? I say, you people say that you're. Normally, you think that Africans are monkeys, but why are you going ooh 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 EDL ooh EDL like that?" I said, and then it was. Then they got these. They had these masks on because they didn't want to be recognised by police film. So they had these masks on like that, hanging down here, pair of glasses, hat. So I said, "You say you're against somebody." This guy goes, "We're against Sharia law." I said, "Sharia." I said, "It's not Sharia law. Sharia is a pop singer." I said, "It's Sharia law." And if you're against Sharia law, I said, "Why is it that you're wearing a burqa? You got one of the hijab or whatever these things are on your face." I say, "And you're not even a woman, you know." They were like that, and then everyone was laughing. That was the thing. So it was one little joke after another, and everyone was laughing against them. So then they started smashing things up. They ran over here and started attacking some people. There was a bit of a fisticuff.
There was one bloke that turned over the Muslim table. And
and then there was
I just said, "Why isn't Allah defending the Muslims?"
When was it? Last week?
Last week, yeah, last week. Of course, the bother is that some of them might pick on you. You know what I mean? For example, me. Someone turned around to me and said, "Oh, I shouldn't go over there. You don't know what you're dealing with." Well, the truth of the matter
They're your
is,
beloved working class.
you've got to make an assessment of what the likelihood and danger is. I mean, I'm already on something called. They have this thing called Red Watch, where they put photographs of Reds who should be beaten up on the internet.
Really?
So I'm on that. I've been on that for a few years. Or pictures of me standing at Speaker's Corner. So they send their boys out to take photographs of people, and then they sort of like, you know, encourage people to beat them up. But I thought to myself, well, but if you let these people come down here and get away with it, and not be made look stupid, then they feel stronger, and then they're more likely to come. If they keep coming here every week, they're going to be here anyway. So what's the point in trying to hide your face and not attack them? You might as well just deal with them there and then. And humour was the best thing, because it really did undermine them. And it was the same. It was the same thing about a year ago. The British National Party went down the other side there without police presence, but then the Speaker's Corner gang argued with them. And once they argued with them, they're like, well, and so they don't know what they're doing. And I think that's the way to deal with that. I mean, one is humour, the other is argument, because in that way you undermine their morale. And the only ones you get left is the thug who wants to smash something up anyway, which reveals what they're really about, you know. But you know, it's unfortunate because it was really nasty. At the end, it was a really nasty atmosphere. Charging through here, coppers over there. You know, riot police arrived. You know, so it was quite heavy at the end.
You went attacked.
I made a little disappearing act, and after a while, because once they're running around like maniacs, there was a guy who came over and spoke to us, and he was amongst them. He was one of them. He goes, "I'm an ex-soldier," but then Addy was standing there, and he kept saying, "Why is this guy taking his belt off?" Because he'd taken his big thick leather belt off, and on the end of his leather belt, he had some sort of funny thing, like it looked like a piece of metal inside. So it was like he thought something might happen. And if something happens, he's got to be prepared to smash someone around the head with something. And I just got that impression because he had this belt in his hand like that all the time. He was talking to us, you know. And then I said, look what your guys are doing. And he goes, "Oh, nobody." He pulled this weird face. He goes, "You don't know what's happening over there, right? You don't know," like that. "We don't know what caused that," like that. So he was obviously one of their leaders actually, because he had a little bit of a brain. And I mean a little bit of a brain.
The Sikh guy, the guy who leads the body, wasn't he here last week?
No, there was no Sikhs.
Because there's a Sikh guy who leads them.
Yeah, well, because amongst the Sikhs, there's a layer of within the Sikh community who are anti-Muslim, and this is why you get these pogroms in India, and so of course they've used that as a means of getting some anchor within the Sikh community and making an alliance to try and attack Muslims. So it's a little conscious strategy by some theoreticians of the far right who've created this movement called the EDL because they think that's a way of mobilising the more backward layers of the working classes on the streets against the Muslims and stirring up this hatred upon which the Conservative Party is playing, of course. They're doing exactly the same game, leaning on this argument, saying, "Oh yeah, but you know, Muslims are coming." They don't say Muslims, but they mean that. Muslims come in here claiming, you know, have 10 children and claim the housing benefit and get £20,000 from the state. But when David Cameron claims £20,000 for his house, his third or fourth house from the British population, then it's perfectly all right. You know, and so the utter hypocrisy of these conservative government liars is self-evident. Then they turn around and say, "Oh, the benefit budget's too high." Benefit budget's too high apparently, and of course they've got this argument circulating throughout society. The benefit budget, look how high it is. Now why is the benefit budget high? It's high because the rents are high. Why are the rents high? Because the speculators in the banks gave out cash willy-nilly to landlords to rent out property to other people. Meanwhile their property prices were rising all the time. Now the property prices have been consistently falling, the rents have not fallen alongside that. Because as a buffer, they've had the government paying housing benefit as a subsidy to the landlords. It's not a subsidy to the tenant. The tenant was in that property when it was a third or a tenth of the price in rent. In other words, the rental that's paid to the tenant is merely a subsidy for the landlords. So again, housing benefit, which they argue so vociferously is received by parasites, it is true it's received by parasites, but the parasites are not the tenants, the parasites are the landlords. And the banks who the landlords pay in order to acquire the properties through their speculative orgy that they engaged in the last few years. Then they want to blame ordinary people who end up in poverty, circumstance of poverty, for claiming housing benefit. The fact of the matter is, in London, huge swathes of the population who are entitled to claim housing benefit, the working poor, do not even dare or know that they can claim it. If you're earning £1,500 in London and your rent, one-bedroom flat in London, is £300 a week, a one-bedroom flat. So what are they talking about? If you work in London, earning £1,500 a month, after taxes you're left with £1,200. It's not even enough to rent a one-bedroom flat. But actually, legally, huge swathes of the working population are allowed to claim housing benefit, but do not, because they don't know they're allowed to claim it. They think only unemployed people claim housing benefit. Now, of course, they're not going out and encouraging those people to claim housing benefit. as they say, oh, we want the working people to live. They don't want the working people. They want the wealthy people to live in London, and they want the poor people living in the outskirts in dumps.